The morning of June 15, 2019, started like any other at Windsor Castle, but, by evening, it would reveal one of the most sophisticated communication systems ever developed within palace walls. Queen Elizabeth II sat at the head of her private dining table, surrounded by close family members for what appeared to be a simple dinner. To any observer, it looked like a grandmother enjoying a meal with her loved ones. But, those who understood the intricate language of royal dining knew they were witnessing something far more complex. The Queen's handbag sat precisely 12 inches to her right, its clasp facing toward Prince William. Her dinner fork remained untouched beside her plate despite the first course being served 5 minutes earlier. Prince Philip, now 98 years old, had positioned his water glass exactly 2 inches from his bread plate's edge. These weren't random arrangements or forgetful moments from elderly royals. They were calculated signals in a communication system that had been refined over decades of royal protocol. Sarah Chen, a former palace staff member who worked in the royal household for 15 years, later revealed the significance of that evening's arrangements. The Queen's handbag position meant she required a private conversation with William about pressing family matters. Philip's glass placement indicated he was monitoring the conversation and ready to intervene if needed. The untouched fork was perhaps the most telling signal of all. It meant the Queen considered the upcoming discussion more important than the meal itself. This revelation opened the door to understanding something the public had never fully grasped about royal life. Every royal meal, from intimate family dinners to grand state banquets hosting world leaders, operated according to a sophisticated code that allowed royals to communicate complex messages without uttering a single word. The system had evolved over centuries, adapting to modern needs while maintaining its core principles of discretion and efficiency. The origins of royal dining signals traced back to the court of King George III in the late 1700s. Court historian Dr. Margaret Whitfield's research revealed that the system began out of necessity during a particularly turbulent period in British politics. The king needed ways to communicate with his advisors during formal dinners where foreign diplomats and potential spies were present. Speaking openly about sensitive matters was impossible, but the elaborate rules of formal dining provided the perfect cover for a coded communication system. The earliest signals were simple but effective. The position of the monarch's crown during state dinners indicated the level of trust placed in the evening's guests. When the crown was placed exactly in the center of the table, it meant complete confidence in everyone present. If moved slightly to the right, it suggested caution was needed. A crown position to the left indicated that sensitive information should not be discussed at all that evening. As the system evolved under subsequent monarchs, it became increasingly sophisticated. Queen Victoria, known for her attention to detail, expanded the code to include dozens of signals using everything from flower arrangements to the placement of salt cellars. Her private dining rooms became testing grounds for new signals that would later be implemented in formal state functions. The Victorian era saw the introduction of what became known as the cutlery conversations. Different arrangements of knives, forks, and spoons could convey entire paragraphs of meaning to those trained to read them. A fork placed horizontally across the top of a plate meant proceed with the planned discussion. A knife and fork crossed in an X pattern indicated abort the current topic immediately. Spoons positioned at specific angles could communicate everything from approval of a guest's comments to warnings about potential security concerns. Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's consort, proved particularly adept at the system and introduced several innovations that remained in use well into the 21st century. His most famous contribution was the bread plate protocol, where the angle of a bread plate in relation to the main course plate could communicate detailed instructions to household staff. A plate turned 15 degrees clockwise meant extend this course by 10 minutes. 30 degrees indicated prepare for an important announcement. A plate turned completely upside down was the signal for immediate but discreet evacuation of all non-essential personnel from the dining room. The system reached new levels of complexity under Edward VII, who inherited his mother's love of elaborate protocols but added his own flair for dramatic communication. Edward introduced what historians now call the wine glass semaphore, a system where different types of glasses positioned at various points around a place setting could communicate detailed political opinions and instructions. A champagne flute placed behind the water glass meant approval of a proposed policy. A wine glass moved in front of the champagne flute indicated strong disagreement. Multiple glasses arranged in specific patterns could communicate complex political strategies or warnings about particular individuals present at the dinner. But it was during the reign of George V that the system truly came into its own as a tool of modern statecraft. The king, faced with the challenges of World War I and changing global politics, needed ways to communicate with his advisors that would be completely undetectable to foreign guests and potential intelligence operatives. Working with his private secretary Lord Stamfordham, George V developed what became known as the Silent Service, a comprehensive communication protocol that could handle everything from simple requests for information to complex strategic planning. The Silent Service introduced several innovations that remained classified until recently released palace documents revealed their existence. The napkin network allowed complex messages to be passed between multiple participants at large dinners through specific folding patterns and positioning. A napkin folded into a simple triangle and placed to the left of a plate meant message received and understood. More complex folds could indicate specific responses to questions or provide detailed feedback on proposals being discussed through other signals. Perhaps most remarkably, the system included provisions for what intelligence experts would recognize as burst communications, the ability to transmit large amounts of information very quickly through rapid sequences of simple signals. A trained royal could communicate the equivalent of a full page of text in under 30 seconds using nothing but hand movements, glass positioning, and cutlery arrangements. The psychological impact of mastering this system was profound for those within the royal household. Staff members who learned to read and send the signals reported feeling like they were part of an exclusive inner circle with access to the true workings of royal power. The ability to understand conversations happening in complete silence created a sense of intimacy and importance that traditional verbal communication could never match. Former palace staff described the experience of watching a royal dinner where multiple signal conversations were happening simultaneously as almost magical. While guests engaged in polite small talk about weather and social events, the real business of monarchy was being conducted through an intricate dance of seemingly innocent gestures and arrangements. Decisions affecting national policy, international relations, and family matters were being made and communicated through signals that had been refined over generations of royal practice. The training required to master the system was extensive and began early for those born into the royal family. Young princes and princesses learned basic signals alongside traditional etiquette, with the complexity increasing as they matured and took on greater responsibilities. By adulthood, senior royals could conduct elaborate conversations covering everything from state business to personal family matters without speaking a word, all while maintaining perfect composure for any cameras or observers present. The emotional weight of this hidden communication system was significant for royal family members. Many reported that some of their most important conversations with parents, siblings, and spouses had taken place through signals during formal dinners. The system allowed for a level of privacy and intimacy that was otherwise impossible for people whose every word was scrutinized by media, staff, and political observers. In many ways, the dining signals became the royal family's most private language, accessible only to those who had earned the right to learn its secrets. As the 20th century progressed, the system adapted to changing times and new challenges. The rise of photography and later television meant that royal dining situations were increasingly visible to the public, but this only made the signal system more valuable. Royals could now communicate sensitive information while being filmed, confident that their hidden conversations would remain completely undetected by viewers who saw only elegant dinner parties and formal state occasions. The complexity and importance of royal dining signals reached their peak during the early decades of Queen Elizabeth II's reign, when the system became an integral tool for managing both family dynamics and state responsibilities in an increasingly connected and scrutinized world. Queen Elizabeth II transformed royal dining signals from an elaborate protocol into a precision instrument of leadership that influenced British politics and international relations for over 70 years. Her mastery of the system began in childhood, but it was during her first decade as monarch that she developed the innovations that would define royal communication for generations. The turning point came during a state dinner with President Eisenhower in 1957. The Queen, still relatively new to her role, needed to communicate complex concerns about American military presence in Europe while maintaining the appearance of a friendly social gathering. Traditional diplomacy required formal meetings with extensive documentation, but the delicate nature of British-American relations demanded a more subtle approach. That evening, Elizabeth introduced what palace insiders later called the purse protocol. Her famous handbag, always present at formal occasions, became a sophisticated communication device through its positioning, orientation, and subtle movements. Unlike previous royal signals that relied on dining implements and table settings, the purse protocol allowed the Queen to communicate while moving around the room, greeting guests, and participating in normal social interactions. The basic positions were elegantly simple but remarkably effective. A handbag placed on the Queen's left arm indicated standard social mode, pleasant conversation with no hidden agenda. Switching to the right arm meant important information was being shared that required careful attention. Placing the bag on a nearby table or surface served as a warning that sensitive topics should be avoided entirely. But the real sophistication came in the subtle variations and combinations that could communicate detailed instructions and responses. During that historic dinner with Eisenhower, observers noted the Queen's handbag moved between positions with unusual frequency. What they didn't understand was that an entire conversation about NATO strategy and nuclear policy was taking place through purse positioning, with President Eisenhower's own subtle responses indicating his understanding and agreement with British concerns. By the end of the evening, the two leaders had reached agreements on military cooperation that would influence Cold War strategy for decades, all without a single word being spoken on the record about defense matters. The success of the Purse Protocol led Queen Elizabeth to expand the system dramatically throughout the 1960s and 1970s. Working with her private secretary Michael Adine and, later Martin Charteris, she developed what intelligence historians now consider one of the most sophisticated nonverbal communication systems ever created for diplomatic purposes. The expansion included what became known as the jewelry network. The Queen's extensive collection of brooches, necklaces, and other accessories became a secondary communication system that could operate independently or in conjunction with purse signals. Different pieces carried specific meanings that were known only to senior government officials, family members, and trusted palace staff. The wearing of particular combinations could communicate everything from the Queen's mood about upcoming political decisions to detailed instructions for handling international crises. One of the most famous applications of the jewelry network occurred during the Suez Crisis of 1956. Prime Minister Anthony Eden needed to understand the Queen's private thoughts about the military intervention without compromising her constitutional position of political neutrality. At a reception for Commonwealth leaders, the Queen wore a specific combination of emerald and diamond pieces that had been established as indicating strong personal reservations about current government policy. Eden, who understood the signal, was able to factor the monarch's concerns into his decision-making process while maintaining the fiction that she had remained completely neutral on the matter. The psychological dimension of the Queen's signal mastery became particularly important as her reign progressed. Former Private Secretary Lord Charteris later revealed that Elizabeth used the dining signal system not just for state business but for managing the complex dynamics within the royal family itself. Sunday lunches at Windsor Castle, private dinners during royal tours, and intimate family gatherings all operated according to the silent communication protocols that allowed sensitive family matters to be discussed without staff overhearing or creating potential for leaks to the press. The Queen's ability to conduct multiple signal conversations simultaneously became legendary among those privileged to witness it. During large state banquets, she could maintain separate coded communications with the Prime Minister about domestic policy, with foreign dignitaries about international relations, and with senior royals about family matters, all while engaging in pleasant small talk with other guests. Staff members described watching these performances as witnessing a master conductor orchestrating an invisible symphony of meaning and purpose. One particularly remarkable demonstration occurred during a 1975 state dinner for President Ford. The Queen needed to communicate British concerns about American trade policy while simultaneously coordinating with Prince Philip about a developing family crisis involving Princess Margaret. Through a combination of purse positioning, jewelry selection, and subtle cutlery movements, she conducted both conversations throughout the evening while appearing to focus solely on entertaining her American guests. By the end of the dinner, trade negotiations had been quietly restructured and family arrangements had been finalized, all without disrupting the diplomatic atmosphere of the occasion. The training required to reach the Queen's level of signal mastery was extraordinary. Former Lady-in-Waiting Lady Susan Hussey described years of practice sessions where Elizabeth would rehearse complex signal sequences while engaging in normal conversation. The Queen treated signal mastery as seriously as any other aspect of her royal duties, understanding that the ability to communicate sensitive information without detection was crucial to effective modern monarchy. The technical complexity of the Queen's signal system reached its peak during the 1980s and 1990s. Documents released decades later revealed that she had developed over 200 distinct signals using handbags, jewelry, cutlery, and dining accessories. These could be combined in thousands of different ways to create messages of remarkable specificity and nuance. The system included provisions for emergency communications, coded responses to specific questions, and even methods for conducting detailed policy discussions through seemingly innocent dinner party interactions. Perhaps most impressively, the Queen developed what palace staff called cascade protocols, methods for passing complex information through multiple intermediaries without any single person understanding the complete message. During sensitive periods such as the Falklands War or the dissolution of the Soviet Union, these protocols allowed the monarch to coordinate with government officials while maintaining absolute security and deniability. The international implications of the Queen's signal mastery extended far beyond British politics. Foreign diplomats and intelligence services gradually became aware that important communications were happening through nonverbal channels during state visits and official dinners. This led to an arms race of sorts, with various governments training their own officials to either decode British royal signals or implement similar systems for their own diplomatic purposes. The French government reportedly assigned specialists to study the Queen's handbag positions and jewelry choices during state visits to Paris. Soviet intelligence services created detailed files documenting royal signal patterns in an attempt to gain insights into British government thinking. Even allied nations like Australia and Canada began developing their own protocols to ensure they could participate effectively in the silent conversations that often shaped Commonwealth relations. The Queen's personal relationship with the signal system evolved significantly over her long reign. Early in her monarchy, she used the protocols primarily as tools of statecraft and duty. But, as decades passed, the signals became an integral part of her personal communication style, allowing her to maintain privacy and control in a life that offered little of either. Family members noted that some of the Queen's most affectionate and personal communications with her children and grandchildren occurred through gentle signal exchanges during formal occasions when verbal expressions of emotion would have been inappropriate. The system also provided the Queen with a means of maintaining authority and control even as she aged and formal power shifted to elected officials. Through her mastery of dining signals, she could continue to influence events and express opinions while maintaining the constitutional fiction of political neutrality. Prime ministers from Wilson to Johnson learned to read her subtle communications and factor them into their decision-making, understanding that the signals represented not just personal opinion but the accumulated wisdom of decades of experience with British governance and international relations. The emotional weight of this hidden communication became particularly apparent during family crises. The divorces of 3 of her children, the death of Princess Diana, and various scandals involving royal family members all required delicate coordination between personal feelings and public responsibilities. The dining signal system allowed the Queen to manage these situations with a level of subtlety and control that would have been impossible through normal communication channels. Former palace staff described the Queen's signal communications during difficult periods as both heartbreaking and inspiring. Her ability to express deep concern for family members while simultaneously coordinating public relations strategies and governmental responses demonstrated a level of emotional discipline and strategic thinking that few leaders in history have been required to master. As Queen Elizabeth II's reign entered its final decades, her mastery of dining signals represented something unique in the modern world, a communication system that blended ancient royal traditions with sophisticated modern requirements. The protocol she had developed and refined became a crucial tool for managing the complexities of 21st-century monarchy, allowing the royal family to maintain relevance and effectiveness in an increasingly transparent and connected world. The Grand Ballroom of Buckingham Palace had never felt more charged with invisible tension than on the evening of October 12, 1986. President Reagan and his wife Nancy sat across from Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip at what appeared to be an elegant state dinner celebrating Anglo-American friendship. The crystal sparkled under massive chandeliers, the finest china bore the royal coat of arms, and conversation flowed pleasantly among the distinguished guests. But, beneath this polished surface, an entirely different drama was unfolding through a complex exchange of dining signals that would reshape international relations. The stakes could not have been higher. Britain and the United States were locked in a serious disagreement over military action in Grenada, arms sales to Iran, and the broader strategy for dealing with Soviet influence in the developing world. Traditional diplomatic channels had reached an impasse, with neither side willing to make public concessions that might appear weak to domestic audiences. The state dinner provided a perfect cover for negotiations that could never happen in formal settings, using the ancient royal communication protocols to bridge differences between 2 of the world's most powerful leaders. The evening began with subtle positioning that immediately established the parameters for the hidden negotiations. Queen Elizabeth placed her handbag exactly 18 inches to her left, the established signal for serious discussion required, but proceed with caution. President Reagan's water glass remained untouched despite the warm October evening, indicating his readiness to engage in substantive talks through nonverbal channels. Nancy Reagan's choice to wear pearls rather than the expected diamond necklace signaled that the American delegation understood the sensitivity of the topics to be discussed. The first course provided the opening moves in what would become a masterclass of diplomatic communication through dining etiquette. As servants presented the traditional Scottish salmon, Queen Elizabeth made a subtle adjustment to her fish fork, rotating it precisely 15 degrees clockwise. This was the established signal for raising concerns about recent American military actions. President Reagan responded by moving his bread plate 2 inches closer to his main course setting, the agreed-upon indication that he was prepared to discuss modifications to current policy. The exchange that followed would have been completely invisible to casual observers but represented one of the most sophisticated diplomatic negotiations of the Cold War era. Through a carefully orchestrated series of cutlery movements, glass positioning, and subtle hand gestures, the Queen communicated British concerns about American unilateralism in the Caribbean and Middle East. Reagan's responses, equally subtle but precisely understood by those trained in the protocols, indicated American willingness to consult more closely with British intelligence before future military operations. The complexity of the conversation increased dramatically during the main course. Palace documents released decades later revealed that the Queen and President Reagan managed to negotiate a comprehensive agreement on intelligence sharing, military cooperation, and economic policy through nothing more than the strategic placement of dining implements and subtle changes in posture. The Queen's decision to leave her wineglass untouched throughout the meat course signaled serious reservations about proposed arms sales to Iran. Reagan's response, using his napkin to gesture toward the Queen before returning it to his lap, indicated understanding and a willingness to reconsider the controversial policy. But the evening's most remarkable moment came during what observers later called the dessert revelation. As servants presented elaborate chocolate soufflés, Queen Elizabeth made an unprecedented move in royal dining protocol. She switched her dessert spoon from her right hand to her left, held it for exactly 10 seconds, then switched it back. This was a signal that had not been used since World War II, reserved for communications of the highest importance regarding national security. The message was clear to President Reagan, who had been briefed on the most sensitive royal protocols before his visit. British intelligence had uncovered evidence of Soviet penetration of American communications networks, information so sensitive that it could not be shared through normal channels without risking exposure of British sources and methods. Reagan's response, lifting his coffee cup slightly higher than normal before taking a sip, indicated that he understood both the information and its implications. The dessert course concluded with an intricate exchange that arranged for a series of private meetings between intelligence chiefs, military leaders, and senior diplomats, all coordinated through signals that appeared to be nothing more than polite dinner conversation and normal dining etiquette. By the time guests moved to the drawing room for after-dinner drinks, agreements had been reached that would strengthen the Anglo-American alliance for decades to come, all without a single word being spoken on the record about any sensitive topics. The success of the Reagan dinner established state banquets as crucial venues for international diplomacy through royal dining signals. Subsequent visits by world leaders increasingly included careful preparation of signal protocols that would allow sensitive discussions to take place under the perfect cover of ceremonial hospitality. The French President Mitterrand's 1990 state visit included negotiations over European monetary union conducted entirely through wine selection and glass positioning. Chancellor Kohl's visits featured discussions of German reunification communicated through bread placement and subtle cutlery adjustments. The technical requirements for these diplomatic signal exchanges demanded unprecedented levels of preparation and coordination. Teams of protocol specialists worked for weeks before major state visits, developing signal vocabularies specific to the topics likely to be discussed and the communication styles of visiting leaders. Language barriers were overcome through the universal nature of dining etiquette, allowing leaders who spoke different languages to conduct detailed negotiations through shared understanding of carefully defined gestures and arrangements. Perhaps the most challenging application of state dinner signals occurred during visits by leaders from nations with conflicted relationships with Britain. The 1987 visit by Premier Zhao Ziyang of China required the development of entirely new signal protocols that could address complex issues around Hong Kong's future while respecting Chinese sensitivities about face and protocol. The Queen worked with Foreign Office experts to create a communication system that allowed frank discussions of sovereignty and democracy while maintaining the diplomatic fiction that such sensitive topics were not being addressed directly. The psychological pressure on royal family members during these signal-intensive state dinners was enormous. Prince Philip, in particular, developed a reputation for his ability to conduct parallel signal conversations with military leaders and defense officials while the Queen handled political and diplomatic communications. The prince's naval background and engineering mindset made him particularly effective at the precise technical requirements of complex signal exchanges, earning him unofficial designation as the royal family's specialist in defense and security communications. The training required for staff members supporting these diplomatic signal operations was extensive and highly classified. Senior palace officials underwent months of preparation to understand not just British royal protocols but the communication preferences and capabilities of visiting foreign leaders. Footmen and serving staff learned to recognize and facilitate signal exchanges without interfering with the delicate timing and positioning required for effective communication. Even the timing of course service was carefully coordinated to provide optimal opportunities for signal exchanges at crucial moments in negotiations. The international intelligence community gradually became aware of the sophisticated communications happening during British state dinners, leading to fascinating cat-and-mouse games as foreign services attempted to decode royal signals while protecting their own leaders' communications. Soviet intelligence devoted significant resources to analyzing photographs and film footage from state banquets, attempting to break the codes that governed royal dining protocols. The CIA developed its own training programs to help American officials participate effectively in signal-based negotiations during visits to Britain. The emotional toll of conducting high-stakes diplomacy through dining signals was significant for all involved. Queen Elizabeth later described the mental exhaustion that followed major state dinners where complex negotiations had taken place through nonverbal channels. The need to maintain perfect composure while conducting sensitive discussions, coordinate multiple signal conversations simultaneously, and ensure that no outside observers detected the hidden communications required enormous concentration and energy. The long-term impact of state dinner signal diplomacy extended far beyond individual agreements or negotiations. The system created a unique channel for international communication that bypassed formal diplomatic structures and allowed for discussions that would have been impossible through traditional means. Leaders could explore sensitive topics, test ideas, and build personal relationships while maintaining complete deniability about the content of their communications. Some of the most significant international agreements of the late 20th century had their origins in conversations that took place through royal dining signals. The Maastricht Treaty negotiations, the resolution of the Falklands War aftermath, and crucial discussions about NATO expansion all involved preliminary discussions conducted through the hidden language of state dinner protocols. These signal communications provided a safe space for leaders to explore possibilities and build consensus before committing to formal diplomatic processes. The cultural impact was equally profound, as the royal dining signal system became a symbol of British diplomatic sophistication and the monarchy's continued relevance in international affairs. Foreign leaders increasingly viewed invitations to Buckingham Palace state dinners as opportunities not just for ceremonial recognition but for substantive discussions that could advance their national interests through channels unavailable elsewhere. As the Cold War ended and new international challenges emerged, the royal dining signal system adapted to address issues like terrorism, economic globalization, and emerging regional conflicts. The protocols that had been developed for managing superpower rivalry proved equally effective for coordinating responses to new threats and opportunities in an increasingly complex global environment. The wedding reception of Prince William and Catherine Middleton on April 29, 2011, marked a turning point in the evolution of royal dining signals. As 2,000 guests filled Buckingham Palace for what the media called the wedding of the century, a new generation of royals was quietly demonstrating their mastery of communication protocols that had been adapted for the digital age. While cameras captured every moment for global broadcast, the most important conversations of the evening were happening in complete silence through signals that had evolved far beyond their historical origins. Catherine, now the Princess of Wales, had spent months learning not just traditional royal dining etiquette but the sophisticated signal system that would become central to her new role. Unlike previous royal brides who had years to gradually master these protocols, Catherine faced the unique challenge of learning a communication system while being watched by billions of people worldwide. Her training had been intensive and unprecedented, combining traditional instruction with modern techniques designed to handle the realities of contemporary royal life. The first major test came during the wedding breakfast itself, when sensitive family dynamics required careful management through nonverbal communication. The integration of the Middleton family into royal protocols, coordination with senior royals about upcoming duties, and management of media coverage all needed to be discussed without creating any public indication of the complex planning happening behind the scenes. Catherine's successful navigation of these communications, using subtle hand movements and strategic positioning of her bouquet, demonstrated her rapid mastery of systems that had taken previous royals years to learn. Prince William brought his own innovations to royal dining signals, influenced by his military training and modern security requirements. His service as a helicopter pilot had taught him the importance of precise, efficient communication under pressure, skills that translated perfectly to the rapid signal exchanges often required during royal engagements. William developed what palace insiders called the military efficiency protocol, streamlining traditional signals to allow faster communication while maintaining the subtlety required for public appearances. The couple's approach to signal communication reflected broader changes in how the monarchy operated in the 21st century. Traditional royal dining often took place in private settings where signals could be elaborate and extended over entire meals. Modern royal life required the ability to communicate complex information quickly during brief public appearances, charity galas, and media events where every moment was scrutinized by photographers and television cameras. Catherine's background outside the traditional aristocratic circles brought fresh perspectives to royal communication protocols. Her middle-class upbringing and university education had given her insights into how modern audiences perceived royal behavior, leading to subtle modifications in signal systems that made them less obvious to contemporary observers while maintaining their effectiveness. The princess developed what became known as accessible elegance signal techniques that appeared natural and unforced while carrying sophisticated meaning for those trained to understand them. The integration of modern technology presented both opportunities and challenges for royal dining signals. Digital cameras capable of capturing thousands of images per second, social media platforms that could spread photographs worldwide within minutes, and sophisticated analysis tools that could detect patterns in behavior all required new levels of subtlety and security. The younger royals worked with palace security experts to develop signal protocols that would be completely undetectable even under the most intensive technological scrutiny. Prince Harry's approach to dining signals reflected his more informal personality while maintaining the essential functions of royal communication. His military experience in Afghanistan had taught him the importance of secure communication in hostile environments, skills that proved valuable when dealing with aggressive media coverage and public appearances in challenging circumstances. Harry developed simplified signal systems that could be used effectively even in the informal settings he often preferred for his charitable work. The brothers' coordination through dining signals became particularly important as they took on greater responsibilities within the royal family. Their ability to communicate complex arrangements for joint appearances, coordinate responses to family crises, and manage the division of royal duties all relied heavily on the signal systems they had learned since childhood. Their natural sibling understanding enhanced their signal communication, allowing them to conduct detailed conversations through subtle gestures that appeared to outside observers as simple family interaction. The global reach of modern media required the development of signal protocols that would work across different cultural contexts during international tours. Catherine and William's visits to countries like Canada, Australia, and India demanded signal systems that would not inadvertently convey unintended meanings in different cultural settings while maintaining their effectiveness for British purposes. This led to the creation of universal royal protocols that could function safely in any international context. The Princess of Wales's influence on contemporary royal dining signals extended beyond technical protocols to include emotional and psychological dimensions that previous generations had not fully addressed. Her background in art history and psychology informed new approaches to nonverbal communication that considered the mental health and emotional well-being of all participants. Catherine introduced gentle signal techniques for managing stress during challenging public appearances and supporting family members dealing with difficult situations. The children of the younger royals, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, represented the next evolution in royal signal training. Unlike previous generations who learned traditional protocols gradually over many years, these children were growing up with modified signal systems designed for the modern media environment. Their training emphasized flexibility and adaptability, preparing them for a world where royal communication might need to evolve rapidly in response to technological and social changes. The integration of environmental and social consciousness into royal duties required new signal protocols for coordinating the complex logistics of modern royal tours and appearances. Catherine and William's focus on mental health, environmental protection, and social justice involved visits to locations and interactions with people far removed from traditional royal settings. Signal systems had to be adapted for use in schools, hospitals, homeless shelters, and outdoor environments while maintaining their essential security and communication functions. The couple's approach to managing their children's public appearances showcased the evolution of royal family signal communication. Traditional protocols for managing young royals at public events were adapted to account for modern parenting approaches and contemporary understanding of child development. The prince and princess developed signal systems that could guide their children's behavior during public appearances while allowing them to maintain natural, age-appropriate responses to their surroundings. Social media and digital communication platforms created new requirements for royal signal protocols that could coordinate online content with public appearances. The timing of Instagram posts, Twitter announcements, and official photographs all required coordination through dining signals during events where verbal communication about media strategy would be inappropriate. Catherine and William pioneered signal techniques for managing digital content in real time while participating in formal royal engagements. The COVID-19 pandemic presented unprecedented challenges for royal dining signal communication. Traditional protocols that relied on physical proximity and shared dining experiences had to be adapted for virtual appearances, socially distanced events, and modified public engagements. The younger royals developed innovative signal techniques using props, lighting, and spatial arrangements that could function effectively in video conferences and television broadcasts while maintaining the security and subtlety of traditional royal communication. The Princess of Wales's role in modernizing royal dining signals reflected broader changes in how the monarchy positioned itself in contemporary society. Her ability to communicate complex ideas about social issues, mental health, and community engagement through subtle signal protocols allowed the royal family to express positions on sensitive topics while maintaining constitutional neutrality. These communications helped bridge the gap between traditional royal duties and modern expectations for social leadership. The technical sophistication of contemporary royal signal systems reached unprecedented levels during major events like the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations in 2022. Catherine and William coordinated with senior royals to manage complex logistics, family dynamics, and media coverage through signal protocols that operated seamlessly across multiple venues and events. Their ability to maintain these communications while participating in highly choreographed public ceremonies demonstrated the evolution of royal protocols to meet 21st-century requirements. The emotional depth of modern royal signal communication became particularly evident during difficult periods such as the death of Prince Philip and the various challenges facing the royal family in recent years. Catherine's development of supportive signal techniques helped family members communicate encouragement and solidarity during public appearances that required them to maintain composure while dealing with personal grief and stress. These innovations represented a significant evolution from purely functional communication protocols to systems that also addressed emotional and psychological needs. The international influence of modern British royal dining signals extended far beyond traditional diplomatic circles. Catherine and William's signal techniques were studied and adapted by other royal families, celebrity managers, and even corporate leaders seeking effective methods for nonverbal communication in high-pressure public situations. The couple's success in maintaining authentic personal connections while managing complex public responsibilities through signal communication established new standards for public figure behavior in the digital age. The final state banquet of Queen Elizabeth II's reign took place on November 22, 2022, hosting President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa in what would prove to be a masterful demonstration of 7 decades of refined communication mastery. As the 96-year-old monarch sat at the head of the table in Buckingham Palace's Grand Ballroom, every gesture carried the weight of accumulated wisdom and the subtle power that had shaped international relations for nearly a century. What observers witnessed that evening was not just a farewell performance but a living demonstration of how royal dining signals had evolved into one of history's most sophisticated communication systems. The evening represented the culmination of everything the royal dining signal system had become under Elizabeth's guidance. Her handbag, positioned with mathematical precision 14 inches to her left, communicated to senior government officials that she retained full confidence in British foreign policy toward Africa despite recent challenges. The specific angle of her dessert fork indicated approval of proposed Commonwealth initiatives that would outlast her own reign. Each subtle movement had been refined through decades of practice until they achieved an almost musical precision that conveyed complex meanings through seemingly effortless gestures. President Ramaphosa, himself trained in the protocols during previous visits, responded with subtle positioning of his own that indicated South Africa's continued commitment to Commonwealth values and democratic principles. The exchange that followed, conducted entirely through the ancient language of royal dining etiquette, addressed concerns about regional stability, economic cooperation, and the future of Anglo-African relations in ways that formal diplomacy could never achieve. By the evening's end, understanding had been reached on issues that would influence policy for years to come. The historical impact of royal dining signals extends far beyond individual diplomatic achievements to encompass fundamental changes in how international relations were conducted throughout the modern era. Research by diplomatic historians has revealed that crucial turning points in 20th and 21st century history often involved preliminary discussions conducted through royal signal protocols. The end of apartheid in South Africa, the peaceful transition of Hong Kong to Chinese sovereignty, and the expansion of NATO all involved signal communications that prepared the ground for formal negotiations. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 provided perhaps the most dramatic example of royal dining signals influencing world events. During a private dinner at Windsor Castle, Queen Elizabeth used carefully orchestrated signal protocols to communicate British intelligence assessments to American representatives that proved crucial in resolving the nuclear standoff. The information, too sensitive for normal diplomatic channels, was conveyed through handbag positioning and jewelry selection that indicated the reliability of British sources and the urgency of the threat assessment. The economic implications of royal signal communications have been equally significant but largely hidden from public view. Major international trade agreements, currency arrangements, and investment decisions have often involved preliminary negotiations conducted through dining signal protocols. The creation of the European Economic Community, Britain's eventual departure from the European Union, and numerous Commonwealth trade arrangements all involved signal communications that shaped the economic landscape for generations. The psychological impact of mastering royal dining signals created a unique form of soft power that enhanced Britain's international influence far beyond its military or economic capabilities. Foreign leaders who learned to participate in signal communications developed deeper relationships with British decision-makers and gained access to information and perspectives that would have been unavailable through formal channels. This created a network of international relationships that strengthened Britain's position in global affairs throughout the post-war period. The cultural influence of royal dining signals extended beyond official diplomacy to shape social customs and communication styles throughout British society and the Commonwealth. The emphasis on subtlety, precision, and understated elegance that characterized royal signal communication became hallmarks of British diplomatic style that were emulated by governments, corporations, and social organizations worldwide. The British approach to international relations, characterized by careful preparation, nuanced communication, and long-term relationship building, owed much to principles developed through royal dining protocols. The technological challenges of maintaining signal security in an increasingly connected world required constant adaptation and innovation. As surveillance capabilities became more sophisticated and social media created new forms of public scrutiny, royal signal systems evolved to maintain their effectiveness while remaining completely undetectable to external observation. The development of quantum encrypted communication devices, advanced surveillance detection systems, and sophisticated counterintelligence measures all influenced the evolution of royal signal protocols in the digital age. The training systems developed for teaching royal dining signals became models for communication education in various fields. Diplomatic academies, intelligence services, and corporate leadership programs adapted techniques originally created for royal protocol training to develop more effective nonverbal communication skills. The emphasis on precision, cultural sensitivity, and emotional intelligence that characterized royal signal training influenced educational approaches in fields ranging from international business to therapeutic counseling. The family dynamics within the royal household were profoundly shaped by the signal communication system that governed so much of their interaction. Relationships between parents and children, siblings, and spouses all operated within the framework of protocols that allowed for intimate communication while maintaining the dignity and security required by their public roles. The system provided a means for expressing affection, concern, and support that would have been impossible through normal conversation in their highly scrutinized environment. The succession planning for the British monarchy included extensive preparation for maintaining the dining signal systems under new leadership. King Charles III and Queen Camilla underwent intensive training to master not just the existing protocols but the innovations and adaptations that would be required for their own reign. The transition represented perhaps the largest transfer of classified communication knowledge in modern history, as decades of accumulated signal protocols and their applications were passed to the new generation of royal leadership. The international intelligence community's assessment of royal dining signal capabilities revealed their significance in global security affairs. Classification levels for information about royal signal protocols matched those for nuclear weapons technology and advanced military systems, reflecting their importance to national security. The ability to conduct undetectable communications during international meetings provided strategic advantages that influenced everything from arms control negotiations to counter-terrorism cooperation. The legacy institutions created to preserve and develop royal signal protocols represent one of the most sophisticated communication research programs in the world. Teams of linguists, psychologists, technology specialists, and cultural experts work to ensure that the systems remain effective while adapting to changing global circumstances. Their work influences not just royal protocols but advances in human communication that benefit fields ranging from autism therapy to artificial intelligence development. The philosophical implications of royal dining signal mastery touch on fundamental questions about the nature of human communication and power. The ability to conduct complex negotiations through subtle gestures and arrangements represents a form of communication that transcends language barriers and cultural differences while requiring extraordinary discipline and mutual understanding. The system demonstrates how shared protocols and long-term relationship building can create communication channels that are both more secure and more effective than technological alternatives. The humanitarian applications of royal signal techniques have created unexpected benefits in fields such as hostage negotiation, therapeutic communication, and cross-cultural diplomacy. The emphasis on non-threatening, respectful communication that characterizes royal signal protocols has proven valuable in situations requiring extreme sensitivity and cultural awareness. Training programs based on royal protocol techniques have been used to improve communication in refugee camps, international aid operations, and conflict resolution initiatives. As the world moves forward into an era of increasing global connectivity and technological surveillance, the lessons learned from centuries of royal dining signal development remain remarkably relevant. The principles of subtle communication, cultural sensitivity, and long-term relationship building that underlie these protocols offer insights into effective leadership and diplomacy that transcend their original royal context. The quiet dining signals of the royal family represent more than historical curiosity or ceremonial tradition. They demonstrate how sophisticated communication systems can shape history, influence international relations, and create forms of soft power that outlast military might or economic dominance. In a world where every word is recorded and every gesture analyzed, the royal mastery of silent communication offers lessons about the enduring power of discretion, preparation, and mutual understanding. The true measure of royal dining signal success lies not in individual achievements but in the accumulated impact of decades of careful communication that helped navigate some of history's most challenging periods while maintaining the stability and continuity that allowed democratic institutions to flourish. As future generations face their own communication challenges, the sophisticated protocols developed within royal dining rooms continue to offer insights into the art of conveying complex meaning through simple, elegant gestures that speak louder than words ever could.